Good evening, and we'll go ahead and, it's 6 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And the first item, or the second item on our agenda is the citizens' communication. Sandy, do we have anyone asked to address the board? Okay, thank you. The next item, item number 3, is student recognition. Dr. Wallace.
Our student isn't with us this evening, but I do want to, this came through earlier in the summer, and without the July board meeting, I wanted to highlight. As you are aware, we have a very successful honors program at Nctc, and I received this notice, dear President Wallace, congratulations, your student Jerry Hossel has been selected the 2021 Coca-Cola Leaders of Promise Scholar and will receive a $1,000 scholarship. The Leaders of Promise Scholarship is sponsored by Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation, recognizes 200 Phi Theta Kappa members with awards totaling $200,000. So that is through our work of Jill Swarner in our honors program, and specifically PTK work. So we're excited about that because that's 200 out of thousands of members of Phi Theta Kappa. So congratulations to Jerry. We'll be sure to send a note of congrats to them, and we're excited about that. So just wanted to make that announcement and give them some kudos. Great for them.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the reports, and the first Regent committee would be the Finance Committee. Christy?
The Finance Committee met on August 11th. We discussed the 21-22 budget, which will be later in the agenda. We also talked about the proposed tax rate, which you will see later in the agenda. And finally, we wrapped up with some follow-up to the Whitley Penn audit. We had some questions about some of the details in the report, and it was determined that the policies and procedures related to cash handling and accounting would be reviewed by the Finance Committee on an annual basis. And finally, we looked at June and July financial reports, which are later on in the agenda.
All right, thank you for the report. The next one is the Executive Committee, and I'll make that report. We did meet on the 12th of August at 5 o'clock. We discussed several items that are already on the agenda that will be presented again this evening. Of course, the agenda was one we reviewed the assignments for board committees. We talked about the enrollment update. We talked also about the recommended institutional priorities for 2021-22 that are further on the agenda this evening, and also the internal operating procedures manual that the board will be presented with as well. We had further discussion on the Title IX training that the board was to conduct, the Chancellor's Evaluation Board Book, and some conferences that are coming up in 2021-2022. And that we adjourned at 5:40. All right, the next item on there is the report would be the facilities. Mr. Brown?
Yeah, we we discussed the maintenance at Corinth from the freeze as well as the hail. Both of those items are completed, so about $3.4 million in rework there at Corinth. So a lot of good work by Robbie and his team. Also, we discussed the Huckabee Architects being involved in the master plan and possibly a new maintenance building using some of the funds from the land purchase, the land sale, excuse me. In Denton, we also discussed the new lab science building, the new science lab that was built. Enrollment is actually up this semester, so that's good that that's getting completed. Got the CO last Friday. And then here in Gainesville, there's just, no enormous projects, just a bunch of stuff going on. I don't know if anybody walked by the new testing lab here where the old food services used to be, but it's pretty well completed, waiting on a few testing center cubes. The library was also, there's a remodel in there. We did this month receive or get notice that there would be funding for $5 million for the new Medal of Honor museum, so that's kind of up and coming, so that's an exciting thing. Remodeled the gym lockers for the cross-country track team, poured concrete slabs at the equine facility in the process of pouring a slab for the purchasing building here on this campus, and also using some federal COVID funds, working on getting several AC units replaced. So a lot of good stuff going on. maintenance team's doing a good job.
Thank you very much for that report. The next item would be additional reports to the Regents, and that would be Dr. Miller has the financial report first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Since we didn't have a meeting in July, you have 2 months' worth of financial statements in your packet. And June and July are both there. I will probably, most of my references will be to the most current, which will be the July statement if you want to turn back to that. I first wanted to start off on the statement of funds page, and I wanted to specifically draw your attention, an item we seldom talk about, but one of the general and restricted funds that is listed on that report is the revenue bond reserve requirement, and it shows just over $425,000 in that account. And the reason I'm calling your attention to that is because in a minute, when we talk about the budget, we're going to be specifically making reference to this. But what this is ever since we have had the revenue bonds for the facilities in Corinth, which have been 20 years, I believe, the bond covenants required us to set aside 1 year worth of payments. And so for 20 years, we've had essentially the final year of payments set aside in a separate account. And this coming year is our final year. So that has big budget implications. So I just wanted to make sure you saw that we have been carrying that as a separate item on the budget. And it turns out it really does help our budget this next year, the fact that we have been doing that. The next page is the budget comparison. I always like to look at this every month, and bottom line is revenues are definitely outpacing expenses, even much better than they were last year at the same time. So I'm really excited about where it looks like we're going to finish, because the fiscal year does end in 3 weeks, so August 31st. And so we'll be entering audit season at that point in time. But things are looking very good on the budget for this year. And most of the gain that we have in the source of funds, or the revenues, is of course in federal funds, just as we would expect with all the dollars that have come in from the federal government. So that has definitely helped the bottom line for the college. And then finally, a couple of pages further back on the cash flow report, this is the season that historically our cash flow, our reserves are at its lowest, because summer months we don't get as much income as we do, but the expenses keep going out. And if you look at that chart, the last 2 years we've bottomed out either in July or August for the amount of cash that we have on hand. And it was down in the $6 million range, which maybe I wasn't as honest and forthright in previous years when we were there. That's too low. That number is actually a month-in number, so within the month, the number can actually go even lower than that. And so wasn't real comfortable about that at the time, but I feel much better with where we are today. We are in a much more secure position with our cash flows, and you can readily see that by looking at June or even July and August for the past couple of years and see where we stand today. So we're definitely in much better position, and also I'm excited that that middle number on board reserves, that we're up just over $15 million in board reserves, because that basically now represents about 1/4 of our annual budget. Or if you put it in number of months, about 3 months out of a 12-month budget, which that is a wonderful standard. Ever since I've been here, I've hoped we could achieve that as a position of financial security, to know that we have at least 3 months set aside in reserve. So financially, I think the institution is in very good shape. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your report. The next item is the quarterly external funding report by Ms. Sharp.
Thank you. It's always fun to get to come and share on a quarterly basis good news from external affairs. You each have a copy of that update, but just wanted to highlight a few of the items from there. The first being, I know you may have seen it already in the paper, that the Pete Shaw family has established what they call the Grit Award, which is really great because it really embodies who Pete was as far as from his gratitude, responsibility, integrity, and tenacity. So we're working with our faculty, and they are giving us nominations of students that embody those same characteristics. They gave us $100,000, and those funds then will be able to award basically a full ride scholarship for a Cook County student that meets those qualities. So very exciting. They gave us some additional funds so we could go ahead and award that for the fall. So we've actually awarded the first of that scholarship already. The other one was the Christy Hall and her husband David established the Lana and Robert Hall Scholarship. She has been involved with us before through another situation where she was able to establish a scholarship in honor of someone that was a real mentor to her as a teacher. But they wanted to establish this scholarship in their name, and they were very generously, very open because they want to help students that really need the help, and so they provided $25,000 and an additional $10,000 for our emergency fund. And as I was talking with them both, they really feel like that emergency fund can help those students stay in school. And she has such great stories about herself and how Nctc impacted her life, and so it was really exciting to work with them to establish that scholarship. And then the Oakmont Women's Club is an organization that supported the college and foundation probably the last 15 to 20 years. Each year they award between $1,000 and $1,500 for a scholarship for students that are from Denton County. A quick update, this past year we were able to award 1,341 scholarships valued at almost $1 million that we gave out this past year. So very proud of the work of the foundation being able to do that. We are currently at $12.3 billion our assets, and this quarter we received a little over $171,000 in contributions to the foundation. Also just wanted to give a quick update that we have 10 new board members that are serving between our overall board as well as Grand Bowie and Denton, so excited to have some new foundation board members working with us. At the graduation, our Alumni Association, we had a table where we were able to give away free memberships to the Alumni Association as well as free t-shirts. That's always a popular thing as graduates are walking off and out of the building to give them that t-shirt. Updates from our grant programs. Excited to say that we've had several successes, and it's not in this report, but I had our Don Updegrove and Jessica Morton shared with me a report that they've seen that I think it was 27 grants are written, 27, and so far all of those have been funded, and we have 3 pending. So that's just really kudos to their work and their involvement with us with grants. Spotlighted in that update is the ACE grant, and this is a partnership between 3 universities and an ISD, and I know we've talked some about this already, we'll be talking more about it, but it was through the American Council on Education. We received $150,000 for phase 1, and then we also received an additional $75,000 for phase 2. This is allowing us to incorporate what we call Greenlight, which is a software program that will allow our students to have a centralized digital portfolio, for lack of a better term, where students can have their transcripts, they can put other badges in there, they can put information about their classes that they've taken. The bottom line is that we hope that this will allow our students, as they're working with employers, to let employers really see what they've done, and it's going to be a great tool for them. And we are excited to say that we're going to be able to partner with some of our school districts with that Greenlight as well. The other successful grant that I want to highlight tonight is the Emergency Aid Grant. This was a grant through the Greater Texas Foundation. It's a 3-year grant program, and we're going to be receiving $120,000 that we can use over this 3-year period to provide additional emergency aid for our students. But also, we're going to be getting technical assistance from the RIO partners, and this will allow us to make sure that we're doing best practices, that really a nationwide group that's looked at all kinds of emergency aid programs, and we want to make sure how we're handling ours meets those standards as well. And Dr. Wallace, you may have already talked to the board about the Promise grant. grant?
Yes, and in fact, the Promise Grant and Promise Program will be a large conversation for us at your September board meeting. We're excited to be partnering with several institutions, and some of us did a road trip to Tyler Junior College to learn about their program. They've already raised almost $20 billion toward that program. And so it's an exciting opportunity for us. One of the things, and I don't want to,
No, it's good.
one of the things I think is going to be important is this is not free college. It is a incentive program for students that work hard and contribute to their communities, do community service. So we'll be presenting you a pretty robust plan of how we want to manage that, what that means, and how we're going to initially begin the process of funding that. And we'll have that conversation with them in September.
Right, okay. So I won't go into more detail, you'll hear more about that later, but it's very exciting, as Dr. Wallace mentioned. SBDC, I've talked to y'all before about the great work they've been doing since COVID, and they continue to do that great work. If we look at their results of 2021 year, they've served 490 businesses, they counseled and advised these businesses in over 2,500 hours of advising. They really have helped a lot of businesses be saved during this COVID time, so just a real kudos to Lori Logan and her staff. From a capital assistance that provided helped their clients get almost $11 million in funding for their businesses. And the other thing, through some of the additional COVID funding, they were able to host 40 non-cost webinars, and they've had such a great response locally as well as nationally that people have listened in on those webinars. So it's been kind of a neat way to expose Nctc, not only here locally helping businesses, but also nationwide. Our Marketing and Public Relations Office has been really working with the missions to help with our campaigns and trying to recruit and encourage students to attend Nctc. So really appreciate all their work with campaigns, with videos, and just really working as hard as they can to make sure that people know that the opportunities to attend Nctc. I also want to talk just a little bit from a perspective, I think it was last year, I'm not sure the exact amount when we came and we talked to the board about some of the grant programs that were ending and the need to continue some of that student success. And when we made that presentation, we also shared that we'd give you an update on what's happened this past year related to those programs. So I want to touch on a couple of the grant programs, and we've invited Andy Plone to share more on the Completion Center. So let me talk to you first about Tech Hire. As you know, this was a 5-year grant that was valued at about $3.9 million. And talking with Beth Sanchez and Donna, they shared some information. I think you'll be happy to hear of the success that this grant has had. This grant, as you know, worked in partnership with business and industry to provide intern opportunities and information for our IT, information technologies, as well as our industrial technology students. They worked with 24 different businesses, and through this partnership, the employers paid our students for their internships about a little over $55,000, but the grant was able to supplement that to over $170,000. So it was a great way for our students to gain hands-on experience. Many of those students, because they did have those internships, have then later on been able to go into full-time jobs with these companies. Also, they provided a lot of different support services for our students through this program. $17,000 were awarded in child care, food, gas, and some emergency aid, maybe for rent assistance funds as well. So again, trying to help keep those students in school. They had a total of 410 participants. 26% of those were new students to Nctc. 36% of students were information technology programs. The overall program were Tech Hire students. And then this, I think, is an impressive number, that 69% of students earning an AAS degree in information technology programs were Tech Hire participants. So we're showing that those support types of programs, that hands-on experience really made a difference to keep them in their classes. The next grant that I want to talk about related to that is our TRIO Student Support Services Grant. This, again, as you may recall, when we were talking about it, we didn't know for sure if we were going to get funded. It's a 5-year grant. And it was kind of up until the very end, right before the new year started, but we did receive word, and we shared that with you, that they did receive funding, so we have the TRIO Support Services for another 5 years. This year, some of their accomplishments, again, they worked with 165 students. and they provided 2,900 services ranging from academic advising, tutoring, to goal setting, time management sessions. So they're getting that hands-on support as they had in the past. This year, even with COVID, they were able to help 32 students either graduate or transfer. So that we felt like was a very good number. And then also Nancy Zamora, as part of that proposal, she was going to expand her role to help the college with some other functions. She did help the grants department write the TRIO talent search grant proposal. I can't make anything public and we don't know for sure, but we're hopeful that we'll know something in the next month or so about this grant. This will be a great addition if we are able to get funding to help us with some of our Denton County, especially Louisville ISD schools. And then also she worked with Daisy Garcia to create a DACA webpage for undocumented students to assist them in applying for admissions and financial aid, as well as helped with the open house that the admissions and their team put together for first generation, including freshmen, to inform them about the resources available here at the college. All these TRIO positions that were discussed last year are actually those positions, and their salaries are covered under the grant, so they are not included institutionally in the budget. At this time, I'd like to invite Amy Plum to come up and talk about the Completion Center. But before I turn it over to Amy, I just wanted to let you be aware that these positions have been included in the 2021-22 budget. So when Dr. Miller present that these positions we talked last time, other than the TRIO ones, are in this budget. Thank you. Amy?
As Amy's coming up, I would like to just publicly say thank you to Debbie and her work. If you look at the total assets of the foundation, and I didn't want to interrupt her presentation, at $12.3 million, I went back to her external funding report from 2014, and at that point it was $7.6 million. So, I mean, that just really shows the effort of our foundation and all that, and she'll never toot her own horn, but that's
Good
the
job.
common. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Board, for the opportunity to present the information to you tonight. I'm honored and privileged to lead the Completion and Career Center team. And so the report you have in front of you tonight has data and statistics. Some of the things that we've done, as you may know, we were funded the first 5 years by a Title III grant, and then this last year as an institution grant. So just wanted to share that information. Over that time period of six years, we've been able to serve almost 20,000 students through a really multifaceted approach. We have a lot of activities and offerings for student engagement, and so that really allows us to reach a broader range of students. And really the services, a lot of them are customizable and made individualized to the students, that we really meet the student where they are based on their needs. So things like the first year experience course, all new students are enrolled in that course. It is now in an online format, but we also have meet and greets and things like that, but opportunities for students to get to know a little bit about Nctc, meet some fellow new college students, and just meet some resources and build connections. And so we serve a variety of students and a large number of students through that activity. And then we were able to plug some success coaching from that. And so then we see a lot of students after they complete the first year experience course, they come and meet with the success coach and create an individualized service plan and move forward that way. So we're really able to reach a broad a range of students that way. And then we also have our student leadership conference. We had it virtual this year, but that again is an opportunity for students to kind of it's a one-day event, but we have students involved in that where they are sharing different things. We've had students who created a club or an organization share how they did that, their process through that, developing their own leadership skills. We have some speakers that are very dynamic and come and just give the students an opportunity to develop those professional development skills. We also do success coaching, as I mentioned, and I really love the success coaching model that we utilize. It's from the Inside Track methodology, but it really allows us to, again, customize and individualize that service for the students. It's all centered around the students' goals. So it looks different for each student. We have some that may come to us many times throughout the semester based on their current situation. We have some that may just check in a few points throughout. But again, it allows the students to take ownership of their education, to look at the barriers and challenges that they have, and then we partner with them and help them develop those skill sets so that they can develop problem-solving skills and things like that to really, again, take ownership of their success. We also have the Career Services Center that is a part of the Completion Center, so we're really excited for those opportunities for students. As you'll see on your handout, we have the new Quality Enhancement Plan coming up, Aspire to be Higher, and that will be focused on employability skills. So really giving students some direct connections to the things that they're learning here and how that can translate as a successful employee. So we're excited for those programs as well. We also have success seminars. We do a lot of just programming with student life and things like that to get students involved. And so I just want to close just telling you two quick stories of students. When I think of success coaching over the past 6 years, we have a lot of stories of students that have participated in our program. But I think of one student that she came to us, she struggled in high school a little, but was motivated, knew that she had some potential, and she came to the Completion Center through the first year experience course. She told us when she sat in the first year experience course, she thought, this is so great, they're telling me all these great resources, I'm so excited. And she said a couple of her classmates weren't so excited, and she said, I couldn't even understand why they didn't want to be in this class, I was so excited. But she came to us and started doing success coaching, and again, just developed her own skill sets and really was motivated to do that. I saw in her, she became a work study student for us. She began to be involved in student leadership. She graduated and transferred to a four-year university and is about to graduate with honors. She actually presented with me at a conference 2 years ago to a room full of educators, and she was very nervous and anxious, but she did amazing, just telling her story. And so just seeing her develop those leadership skills was amazing. And then I also think of a student that came to us who he had a lot of challenges. He had a lot of roadblocks, challenges, barriers, physical, mental, a lot of things that were impeding his success. And so those two success coach stories look a lot different. The sessions looked a lot different, but in the end, that student, his goal was to ask a question in class, just to get the courage, to develop communication skills, to do that. And so for him, asking a question to his instructor, communicating, and passing the class was his success. So again, those are two very different students, but it's so great to see that the coaching methodology that we use and the services that we provide can have a profound impact on those two students and kind of all the students in between. So I just wanted to share those two stories with you today. And again, just thank you for the opportunity and your support to be able to continue these great services for our students. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much for your report. The next report to the Regents would be the Enrollment Report presented by
Good evening. Thank you all again for allowing us to give a report about enrollment to you. Tonight I provided an enrollment report for our current fall 2021 semester. In all student service related areas and instructional divisions have been working hard to assist students and prepare for the fall 2021 semester. The team has also been diligently working to, walk through students through the enrollment process. And within your packet this evening, as of August 12th, North Central Texas College has enrolled a total of 6,651 students for the 16-week, first 8 week, second 8 week, and the mini-semester subterms. And compared to last fall, this is a decline in 2.58% compared to fall of 2020. But I did want to provide an update as of this evening at 5 p.m. We were at 7,015 students, so we're narrowing that gap fall to fall. I wanted to make sure I included that because that was a big increase for us over the past week. And I did want to, within the executive, maybe Dr. Wallace gave me an opportunity to speak to the executive committee, but I did want to share just with the entire board this evening some of the things that you might see differences in the comparisons and provide at least what we were anticipating the why of the differences, especially for our Gainesville campus. Within last fall compared to this fall, there has been some changes in the mode of delivery. For example, last fall there were an increased number of hybrid courses that would have been designated to the Gainesville campus, so students would have taken part of their course on campus and then the rest of it is delivered online. Some of our science classes with the new First Aid Bank Exchange science lab, some science classes have been shifted to Denton this year compared to last fall. And then some of the differences, as Dr. Moss had mentioned in his State of the College earlier, are some of the area universities for admission purposes are not just using, they don't have the same admission criteria such as SAT or ACT. They're actually using rank of students, looking at their GPA and other criteria. So we believe that's part of the reason why there might be a difference in our enrollment this fall. And the concern is whether or not those students will be successful at the conclusion of the fall semester, which may lead to some of those students at universities seeking community college. So we're hoping that that might factor into some of our spring 2022 enrollment at Nctc as well as other community colleges. The semester is set to begin on Monday, August the 23rd, and students will be allowed to register in most classes through the first week of the semester. And there has been various campaigns encouraging students to enroll, providing students with assistance through those processes. We will be open this Saturday from 9 to 1 for all students to have all services, including testing, so we will be adding students and enrolling and allowing them to apply through the first week of the semester. A huge thank you to each of you for your continued support, and a special thank you to the division for their continued dedication to helping students. I got a quick update right before I came up here. We helped over 400 students. That's just through the QLIS line today, so it's several hundred that the staff have been helping, just getting people in classes and getting them through the process. And then also this evening after the board meeting, I would like to invite y'all to, if you would like to have a walkthrough through our new testing center that we're very proud and excited to open, which you probably saw. So if you would like to join us, we will do a quick tour of that. Any questions? I went through that pretty quickly.
No, those numbers continue to look better and better.
They're looking better, and I'll hopefully have an opportunity to get a final update in October of where we are.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. All right, the next item is the Chancellor's Administrative Report, Dr. Wallace.
So it's hard to believe we are at the beginning of another fall. We were celebrating today and in service some of the, just some exciting times about years of service by many of our employees. We celebrated 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 year. I had to mention that Ms. Kaysen sitting before us today, and I'm going to embarrass her one more time because I can. 41 years with the college. Denise has been here. She started when she was 6 years old and has enjoyed every moment, but a true success story in a lot of sense for someone who attended Nctc, worked as a student worker, and now as the Chief Information Officer for the district. That's a success story, but we're seeing some of our employees, it seems like they started yesterday, are now 10-year, 15-year veterans to the cause. So it's good to have people back. We are fully open on our campuses. I do want to give the board and especially our community a bit of a COVID-19 update because I think that's on a lot of people's thought process right now as we see some of the numbers continuing for the variant to increase. What I would say to you right now is that the governor's executive order GA38 really restricted any kind of mandates that we can put forward as a community college. So we are no longer allowed to mandate or have a mask requirement. What we're doing is informing our staff, faculty, and students, if you desire to wear a mask, please feel free to do so. We've also notified our staff of if they need plexiglass and feel safer with that in front of their desk, to notify our emergency management team, and so that's going on. It's been very interesting to see some of our colleagues across the state, and also we can't do the same contact tracing we've done in the past either, as far as how many people that were exposed to that. We're not allowed really to track that any longer. So what we're seeing across the state is some of our colleges are utilizing their HERF funds and federal funds actually to award money for vaccination. We don't choose to exercise that. We believe that, again, we're trying to let people have their own decision-making processes. Our university partners, and so this can affect some of our concurrent enrollments between universities and community colleges, are also urging vaccination, and we would agree that that could be very important for our students. But students, faculty, and staff at some of these institutions are being required to test for COVID at designated intervals throughout their semester, with testing intervals beginning for some of them as early as this week. They are allowing vaccinated individuals to opt out of mandatory testing. You'll hear some of the colleges that students, faculty, and staff are continuing to be required to report symptoms as they have them, and quarantine is necessary. Now, we will still have that in place. If a student, faculty member, or staff actually is a positive COVID case, they will be required to quarantine. They will be required to take their sick leave because the federal relinquishment of that has dissipated. And so that's something we share in common with our university friends. Some of our colleges, the faculty and staff that aren't complying with mandatory COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of negative toward that in our four-year partners, in the sense that ultimately not reporting that can lead to severe and disciplinary approaches and even non-eligibility for raises in some of those. And I only say that to bring up that we really need to understand that the community college is a political subdivision of the state, and we fall under that GA 38. All colleges have met, all the CEOs across the state met last week, and we agree that we're doing the best we can to keep people safe. We'll be cleaning between classes like we always have. We'll follow all the protection and protocols we can, but we cannot exercise the restrictions we had last year. And so I just want to make sure the board was clear with that. And if you had any questions particular for that, to let us know. And as you're thinking, I'll continue on. And if you have questions, please interrupt me. The legislative session ended with a lot of last-minute pulling of funds. For example, we lost $600,000 for the biennium at Nctc in appropriations. We are fortunate, as you heard Mr. Bryan, Regent Bryan report, we did receive the funds for the Medal of Honor Museum. Those funds are actually as a part of what we will draw down each month with appropriations. So in that regard, we've explained to the Medal of Honor host city membership that the building for sure now is property of North Central Texas College. And that's agreeable on all points. It's not been a bad point, but that may show an inflation of appropriation dollars that aren't instructional in nature. So if anyone was to ask us what's that $5 million you got extra, well, that's just one time Medal of Honor Museum. We received $600,000 less and change for the instructional pieces of appropriation. So, but that being said, the governor did take some of the federal monies from the state's award and place that with the coordinating board, about $25 million right now, toward that TRUE initiative that you heard that I have been testifying for, trying to work toward for technical education. Now, that's really good news in the sense that the coordinating board are going through negotiated rulemaking to decide how do we exercise that, how do we apply. Know that Nctc will be in the heart of applying for those funds because we think they're just absolutely imperative. And you'll probably see some of us try to negotiate a little bit more investment of that as we are going to enter the second special session, and we are already being notified that there will be a third special session that will focus on community colleges, perhaps in a way, and how we're funded, et cetera. So we're very much going to be working that third special session for this 87th session. The TAC Legislative Committee, of which I'm a member, is working this week, and then the Executive Committee next week of TAC to make sure we're prepared for those sessions, and we'll keep you informed. I know CCAT's working diligently, the Board of Trustees organization, for that, and so we'll keep those things. I want to introduce a new employee to you this evening that is with us, Dr. Megan Bunyard. Dr. Bunyard, if you would please stand. Our new Graham campus director, and so we're glad to have her. She's got the house, she's got the community already so excited. We appreciate Kim Birdwell's years of service and look forward to Dr. Bunyard. Dr. Bunyard's not new to Nctc, she's a returner. She comes from us as a vice president of student services at a private university, comes back to us, and we're glad to have her back. I remind the board that coming up in September, and specifically September 16th, there's 2 dates to remember. The first one is definitely the fact that we have a SACS visit, which we'll talk about momentarily, which is September I've got 13th through the 16th in that time period. But then also September 16th through the 18th is the CCAT conference, which also entails the Board of Trustees Institute. We have some free registrations, hotel for board members, and so if any of you are interested, we have 2 of those left, or two for, one's for CEO and then there's 2. Chairman is going to do this virtually, I believe you said, Ms. Metzler. And so we do, if you're interested in that, if you'll let me or the chairman know, we'll try to piece you into that if you'd like to attend that. There will be a virtual option though, there's no expense. But the grant covers that through the Texas Success Center, so it is not an expense to the college. Let us know about that if you are interested in any of those things. I think that is my report this evening. We're excited about everything going on. As Mr. Grimes said, there's a lot of building going on, and it's exciting. Again, I talk about legacies. I talk about how interesting it is to see the Mary Josephine Cox estate to this day doing as much as it is, years and years after that gift. In closing, I will remind you, at your desk this evening are several items in your notebook and also in a folder for you to mail back. Those include the report from me, the yearly Chancellor's Report. You also have a list for my professional development activities as you are going to be setting the period of time where you would like to evaluate me. So that document's also in there, the evaluation. The evaluation for the board itself, evaluation is located in there. There's a calendar for the full year for you, and then also the postage paid return envelope for us to send back that chancellor and board self-evaluation instrument as soon as you can, and we'll be discussing times for those later on. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Okay. Just to add to that, about the VOTI conference, if you would like to attend, it is a very good conference. Mr. Ryman have attended before, and Mr. Henderson attended, that's right. The last one that we had in person, I believe. Anyway, it's a really good conference, and with the marriage between CCAT and VOTI and putting them all together as one conference, it really is. It's worth the few days there. So, all right, thank you very much. The next item is the SACS site visit update and the QEP.
We'll tag team this. If you have questions, Dr. Miller's ready. But what I wanted to point out is, again, those dates. At this point, Madam Chairman, we have a tentative schedule. The tentative schedule is for September the 15th at 12 noon in our Denton FSB Exchange. We will need board representation for a 1-hour interview. We can have as little as 2 and as much as we need. If we have a quorum, we will have to post we have a quorum. And so if you will just let the chairman or myself know if you're interested or available. Thus far, the chairman, Metzler, you said you'd be there, and we could do 2 more and not have to worry about quorum.
What day was that?
That is the 15th. It's a Wednesday at noon. September, yes, sir. And it's subject to change, because all their schedule is always subject to change. Also at your desk is a copy of Aspire to be Hired, which is the full narrative of the Quality Enhancement Plan. And it's interesting, Amy's comments, and I would encourage you to look at page 26, because a lot of the outcomes, Amy, that we're going to need for the QEP to be successful are going to rest partially with the very completion center, which you mentioned this evening. And so it's kind of interesting to see how that is relating. Aspire to be Hired, there's an executive summary in here. I would invite you to, I don't mean, Madam Chairman, I don't mean to tell you, but you all need to know this for those interviews particularly. So reading through that, it's very self-explanatory. It's a clean, very quality enhancement plan. If you look at the development process and some of that, you'll see how widespread this plan was and the many people that were involved in that. There's a list of the Quality Enhancement Plan team. I have to say there was a lot of worked toward the end with all of this, and I have to say a huge thank you to those I know directly did the final review, and that's Amy Clone, that was Daphne Riddle, that was Dr. Rochelle Gregory from a technical writing standpoint, that was Maggie Rao on the IE side. I mean, there was Dr. King was in there, I was in there, we were all hands on deck, and it was kind of an exciting time because we were pretty delirious by the end of that review process, because it's a long time. This is a dissertation, folks. And so we're proud of the plan. We look forward to explaining that to our SACS visit. Anything else?
The only thing I was going to say is the visiting team that's coming to our campus is made up of 8 colleagues from throughout the South, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi. But actually, we are having to remain flexible because 2 of the 8 are choosing to attend our site visit virtually. With changes in the COVID situation, they were given the option and they feel more comfortable, and we're going to be working with that group to set up where the on-site team can simultaneously be meeting jointly with their 2 colleagues that are remaining at home. So it's going to be real interesting. But who knows, by the time it arrives, we may have 4 or 5 here instead of the 6. We're just trying to be flexible.
And I think we have already been notified they will be visiting. Is it 8 or 6?
We have 9 off-campus sites
that will be visited, but one of those off-campus sites would also include the new Denton campus. They will need to physically be present to show that there is a facility, but several high school dual credit sites that we've expanded will have to be visited. So we're divvying that up among staff and faculty, and then their staff have to be present at the high school to work with that as well. So we're working on that. Any questions about the process?
Questions? All right, so we'll definitely read through this document, and if someone would like to attend the 15th, tentative the 15th at noon in the Denton campus, then just let Dr. Wallace or myself know so we can count you as the second person. We need 1 more for sure, all right? And as many other folks, Jerry will? Okay. Okay. Anybody else that would like to, just let us know. What?
And I believe that Mr. Haynes also notified us that he was planning to be here.
Okay,
He's not
good.
here this
Well, it'll be
evening,
3 of us.
so there will be 3 in that.
That's very good. Okay. All right. All right, the next item on our agenda would be the appointment of the Board of Regents committees. And the document that was included in your little, in your packet and emailed to you by Sandy in preparation for tonight, it has some incorrect information on it. So I just want to say, really, they didn't change from last year. So the financial committee is Christy Morris will be the chair, and Erica Sullivan will join her. And then on the facilities committee, it would be Mr. Grime as the committee chair, Dick Hayen, and Dylan Ott. On the student success, it'll be Mr. Henderson as the committee chair, and John Grime will continue to serve there as well. And then on the executive and legislation, it's myself as chair, Mr. Hayen as vice chair, and then Christy Morris is on that committee as well. So we'll get a new one of these printed and sent out to you, but I just wanted to make that appointment. Thank you for allowing us, or for agreeing, I guess agreeing is not the right word, for allowing me to appoint you to that committee. All right, the next item would be consideration of the approval of the consent agenda items. Are there any items A through C that we'd like to take off and independently discuss prior to voting on those? All right, so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Mr. Henderson has made the motion. Do we have a second? Erica, thank you very much. Do we have any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and raise your right hand if you don't mind. Aye. Thank you. Motion carried. All right, the next item is under discussion and possible action items. The first one would be consider an action on the Nctc 2021-22 budget. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have in front of you the proposed budget for 2021-22. And the budget that is presented to you tonight is a budget of approximately $61.1 million. We knew we were keeping things pretty close to this current year's budget, and actually, when I was kind of surprised when I saw the final number, that's actually about $350,000 less than this current year's budget. But I think I figured out where the surprise came from the fact that actually in this year's budget, we have reduced the contingency by about $1 million. We knew last year we had to have a considerable contingency, not knowing what the new year held. And it turned out, with assistance from federal funds and such, it was more than ample. And so we have seriously cut back on the amount of contingency dollars that are built into the budget. So there is actually more dollars to spend in the budget than the current year, but it is very close. They're around $61 million. There are several important items that have been included in the budget that I just wanted to call to your attention, and it may not even be noticeable just by looking at that summary document that you have in front of you, but included in this budget have been the results of the Gallagher study that was discussed a couple of months ago, the outside study that was done of our salaries, and it was decided that the college would bring every single staff employee up to the minimum level within the band where their position is located. And it took about $500,000 in order to accomplish that. But that was a goal that we had all along, that we had to get our people up to where that band was appropriate according to the survey of the area and surrounding position personnel that are working throughout this vicinity. So we were very pleased that we were able to accommodate that. Now, of course, not everyone needed a substantial raise to get up to that minimum. Many positions already found themselves within the band range that was appropriate. So other staff positions in this budget will receive a salary adjustment of 2%. So essentially, when it comes to staff, you either get what it takes to get you up to the minimum of your band, or 2%, whichever is greater.
And just so the board's clear, it's 2% of the new midpoint of the new bands. So it still would be a larger raise than would have been 2% of midpoint we traditionally do in the old pay band cycle. Does that make sense?
On the faculty side of the house, they were not included in the salary study, but we did move forward, and we have in the budget a $1,500 annual adjustment for each full-time faculty member. And also, we have included the first significant increase in part-time faculty pay in either 3 or 4 years. It's been quite a while since we had done anything there. So we were able to accommodate those within the confines of this $61.1 million budget. Also included in that budget is an item we're going to discuss later on in the agenda, but we do have the proposal for some additional revenue from local property tax. And like I said, I'll go into those details when we get to that agenda item. And then also, here's where I wanted to call your attention, my comment earlier when we were looking at the financials. If you look at the budget, and I think it's about the 5th, maybe the 6th page back. It's the next to the last printed page on the budget. Under J, Plant Fund Expenditures, Bonds, this is where that bond reserve account that we have really has benefited on this year's budget. You'll notice last year for revenue bonds, For the current year we're in, we had a budget of $905,000. You may recall back in September, we came to an agreement where we were going to go ahead and pay off the CPA revenue bonds. So that knocked about half of that out of our budget. But there still remained about $425,000 that would have to be paid this next year. But after I looked at it closer, I realized we already have that $425 sitting in that reserve account. So when it comes to our operational budget, what we have to plan for the year, those funds are already covered. So we are happy to see that moving forward now, our revenue portion of our expenditures is down to zero, have no more. So we may be talking to you in coming months about some things that we may want to do as an institution that might involve revenue bonds, but if we do that, we'll be coming from a point of having zero outstanding revenue bonds at the current time. Anyone have any questions, anything that you would like to ask regarding the budget? Sometimes it's confusing and difficult just to look at some of these summary figures, and it looks like some of them are going way up, some of them are going way down, and a lot of times there are things shifting and moving from one portion of the budget to the other. But if something jumps out at you and you just have a question or a concern, feel free to ask me and I'll see if I can explain.
The student pass-through fees under D, other funds.
Yes, student pass-through fees, we have numerous classes where there are set fees. Maybe, I'm thinking some of our nursing type classes, there may be supplies and things that you have to buy a packet for the class. And what we've been doing in many of those classes is determining how much that costs and adding it into the student's fee when they register. So they're supplied, they have them. We don't have to wait for them to go out after classes start and collect all those items. So we have these pass-through fees in many of our classes. But what I noticed over the past year was, and this is something I guess I inherited and didn't really notice it the first year, but we had been putting that revenue in to the budget, but we had not been putting the corresponding expense into the budget. And so actually, as we started looking at it, we thought, you know, it may be better just to leave that out of the operating budget because it's a wash. We basically know how many students we're going to have, so we collect the fees from them and then we buy those items for them. So it really is a wash, but unfortunately, we had the numbers showing up on one half of the budget and not the other. So it looks like there's been a huge drop. That's to get it out of the revenue side of the budget since we weren't including it on the expense side.
And Dr. Miller, you had mentioned in your report the July fund statement of funds, the 425.5 revenue bond reduction. So, and then we were going to highlight that again.
That's right. That's back there on page 6. That's where that $900,000. It's the combination of the CPA we paid off in September, and now we can use that reserve account to pay off the balance here in this upcoming year. I want to thank everyone, all my colleagues up here, and honestly, everyone at the college. This is a 6-month project, putting together the budget. We get started back in February, and technically it doesn't come to fruition until September, which is when we actually end up voting on the tax rate to help support the budget. But it's an extended process, and under the circumstances with everything going on this year, it went surprisingly well.
Are there additional questions for Dr. Miller? No? Okay, so we would need to approve the budget as presented. Mr. Henderson will make the motion that we approve the budget as presented. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Moore. Morris. Additional discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item would be the consideration of the approval of 2021-22 salary
The
schedule.
salary schedule was provided as a part of the comprehensive study last month, and that is now in the approved budget, but we technically just need an agenda item to say you approved the budget and the salary schedule as a result, Madam Chairman.
Okay. So we would need a motion to approve the salary schedule as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Sullivan, a second, please. Second by Mr. Grime. Additional discussion? All those signify by saying aye and raising your right hand. Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. There wasn't any competition this week. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item would be the discussion and consideration of the possible action for proposing a tax rate that will exceed the effective rate. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Now we come to the property tax rate. And starting 2 years ago, the legislature made some changes in the tax setting process, and we went through that last year. So some of this maybe I need to just remind you of some of the changes because it is different from what we used to do. But basic property tax 101, our tax rate is made up of two different components. We have the M&O, maintenance and operations. We have INS, interest and sinking. The INS is basically our bond funds, our general obligation bond funds. And so once we have the property tax values and we know what this next year's payment obligations are, the appraisers district has set up first of all, our INS rate. And that rate for the next year is going to be 0.0218. So it's a little over 2 cents of the tax rate goes to cover our general obligation bonds. Then the remainder of the tax rate is the M&O rate. And this is the rate that can fluctuate or that we have some discretion on what type of rate we choose to move forward with in the market, in the community. The appraisal district makes two very important calculations for us. One of them is the no new tax rate. Again, this is new terminology from what we used to use, but now we have the no new tax rate. That is the rate that theoretically would generate the same revenue that we got the previous year. Well, since tax values, property tax values in the area have gone up this year, that tax rate will have gone down to collect the same amount of tax revenues. So the no new tax rate, what we used to call the effective tax rate, but that no new tax rate will, for the next year, when combined with our INS, would be a total of 0.0909. The other important rate they calculate for us is the voter approval rate. And the voter approval rate, it basically allows, the state law now allows us to go up no more than 8% without requiring approval of the voters. So that rate comes in now at 0.095. So realistically, our options are anywhere between those two rates. Anywhere between 0.0909 and 0.095. So just so you know, the current rate that we have is 0.0978. So any of these rates will be a lower tax rate than what we are charging in the community today. And in fact, the higher rate, that 0.095, is still 1/4 cent lower than what we're charging today. But the way the tax law works in the state of Texas, if we do anything over the no new tax rate of 0.0909, the state defines that as an increase in taxes. And we will be putting notice in the paper and we will have notice of a hearing to discuss those tax rates, and it will, by their definition, be called a tax increase. So, I believe the next page that you have behind that might be a bar chart, and I included that to show you what has happened to our property tax rate over the past 6 years. And my understanding is it's been 6 years since we did anything greater than the no new tax rate. So that means every year our property tax rate has gone down. In 1916, it was just over 12 cents. Now, the rates that we're looking at for next year are something just over 9 cents. So, honestly, after 6 years of no new taxes, literally no new tax rate of any sort, no new tax revenue, we're coming before you tonight as the administration asking you to consider a tax rate of 0.0949, which honestly is just under the voter approval rate. This would allow us to collect approximately $300,000 of additional property tax revenue, and this number is almost identical to the $300,000 per year that our state appropriation is being cut for this year. I mean, it just works out to be almost the same number. And when you look at that chart, the 0949 that we're proposing to go with, if you look down in the blue, the M&O rate is just over 7 cents. I think when we looked at that chart 2 months ago, either that is the next to the lowest, or there are just 2 colleges with a lower tax rate in the state.
I believe it puts us second lowest on that line.
I think that's correct. I think it is second lowest. So, we are proposing a rate that, yes, according to the Texas statute, we are increasing taxes because we're going higher than the no new tax rate, but the rate we are proposing is over 1/4 cent less than today's tax rate. So we would like to propose that and offer that up for discussion.
All right, thank you for the education on the tax rate. And we would need a motion. Actually, let me just make this comment. We're just going to record the votes, the board's intent to set the tax rate. The proposal will be posted, the actual proposal will be posted in the upcoming weeks, and a formal vote will be taken to set the actual rate at our September meeting. So today is kind of just to show intent.
Yes, and one other thing I would explain to you, in the old days, you had to have 2 public hearings before you could go up above that effective tax rate. That has been changed, and it is now just 1. And in fact, you could have the public hearing at the beginning of the September board meeting. So yes, we have to have a public hearing, but you don't necessarily have to come and have an extra meeting at a different time. It could be held, we could have a public hearing at the beginning of the September board meeting, and then take action up or down or amend the proposed rate at the September board meeting.
One other key element is we have to have what I would refer to as a supermajority of the board.
Correct.
For that September meeting. You must have 5. We cannot just simply have a quorum. We cannot pass, the colleges, you all cannot pass a tax rate without a significant majority.
60% of the board must vote for a tax increase. So if we just had a quorum and we had 4 people here and it was unanimous, 4 out of 7, I believe, is 57, 58%.
Which would not be.
So it takes 5 board members, regardless how many are in attendance.
And we will have to record the vote
support.
by person, right?
Yes, in fact, tonight's vote to propose a tax rate, the notice that we have to send to the county includes who voted for, who voted against, who abstained, and who was absent.
Okay.
Just to be transparent,
Mhm.
that's the new law when it comes to setting tax rates.
Okay. So I guess at this point, we are trying to see if there's a motion for the action to show intent to set the above mentioned rate of 0949 to be held at, set the rate at the above mentioned 0949, and we will actually vote on this to set the final rate at our September meeting, and we will have a hearing prior to that.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is
All right.
correct. And when I look back at that page, I forgot to mention, and I had highlighted, the sentence that says the combined rate for last year was .09718. That should be for 2020. It says 2019. That's the current year.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
And again, the board is moving forward with the intent, if you vote this for the 0949, you though still have the ability post, public comment to alter that
Absolutely.
percentage you chose.
Do we have a motion? Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Morris. Do we have a second? We have a second by Erica Sullivan. Do we have any additional discussion this evening? Okay, so I guess we'll have to call, or well, you want to call a roll for both? Okay, so we'll go ahead and call a roll. Mr. Ott?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Morris? Carla Metzler, aye. Mr. Henderson?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
So we have motion
One absent.
and one absent. Thank you for reminding me. Mr. Haynes is absent. So we'll note that for the next round of notices.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next one is to consider the adoption of the Board of Regents internal operations procedures. Dr. Wallace.
Many of you will, the complexity associated with board policy is pretty confusing, and there's a lot to it. And so what I've done is write, and I have one typographical error that I will shift on page 1 of 2.2, the Regent will shall, so we'll change that. This was a draft, but what this is intended to do is give you kind of a go-to document when you have eligibility questions of board members, board ethics, and then lead you to policy where it needs to. And it's just a pocket sort of resource, so to speak, on FERPA, on board policy manual, on what the executive committee can and can't do of the board, conflicts of interest. It goes through on vacancies and what you can or can't do for those. It's just a very succinct document to help you understand what it is, and if you need to resource something, or if you have someone that makes a public comment and says, what do I do with this? It's a resource. It does not usurp any board policy. It is not a policy itself. It has been vetted through legal to make sure that there's nothing. It's just a resource for you, but I did feel you needed to be able to review it and be able to say if you want to change it or if you have questions. If you approve it in September, you'll receive a finalized copy, and you would review this, Madam Chairman, every year to make sure there's no alternatives to it. But it's just really a nice little handbook to help the board to understand some things.
All right, so we would consider the adoption, consider the adoption of the internal procedures that Dr. Wallace prepared for us. Do we have a motion? Mr. Henderson has the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Ott, Dylan Ott, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, the next item would be to consider adoption of the Nctc Board of Regents 2021-22 institutional priorities.
So, Madam Chairman, in part of the Executive Legislative Committee, and just from input over the last academic year from the board itself, we have 6 institutional priorities to offer the board for consideration this evening. The first is to continue to pursue the Achieving the Dream recommendations, but with emphasis this year on teaching and learning. we would be glad and to notify you right now that it's sad that our coach, one of our coaches retired. Dr. Murray's been a great Achieve the Dream coach, and he's retired from retiring. And so he will not be with us. We are working on a new coach that has been a teacher, that has worked in classroom at a community college, because what we're trying to do now is give tools for our faculty at the classroom level for how to engage a new generation of learners, special populations, and so that's what that number 1 would focus on. Number 2 is conduct a study regarding reporting classroom attendance and midterm grades as it relates to the success and retention of our students. This was a priority we had pre-pandemic, and we're not able to really track good data because of the effects of COVID on attendance, and we went from attendance to virtual very quickly. So that's been placed back on. Pathways work in concert with the Texas Success Center we're working on. In fact, this Dean Flushy's with us tonight, has been very integral. Sarah's been working that for quite a while with us, as a lot of our departments. Number 4, create, report, and implement a Promise in the Box program for Cook, Montague counties, and Graham Independent School District. That's part of what you'll hear from us in September, as the grant that Debbie mentioned earlier in her report, and we want to be sure we implement that program. These two have been a conversation both from the executive committee, and you all have made comment publicly, and that is to expand the English 1301-02 textbook program to another course. If you remember, Dr. Gregory's presented outcomes of the departments writing their own course material, being able to utilize that. You've asked for us to look and see if we could expand that to another class. And then 6 moves very much in alignment with number 5, which is to explore the possibility of and I focus, explore the possibility of a full program of study that utilizes open resource textbooks and or free textbooks or resources. That doesn't mean we'll find that program, but exploring the notion of, could there be a technical certificate, or could there be an AAS or some track in which there is no cost associated with textbooks. And those are the 6 that were provided for me from the board for these reports. We can add, take away, or whatever we need to do.
All right, thank you for that. And so we would need the adoption of the adoption of the Board of Regents 21-22 institutional priorities. I would accept a motion. Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Morris. Additional second, please. Okay. Mr. Grime, additional discussion. Okay, all those in favor signify and raise your hand, please. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so the next item would be the consideration of a date for the Chancellor's evaluation and the Board of Regents self-evaluation. So the packet that Dr. Wallace mentioned earlier looks like this. If you would take it home, fill it out, and please mail it back so that Sandy will have time to gather those, give them to someone to put the numbers together and show us some trends over previous years, since we're using the same instrument to gather that information. So we're really looking for you to grab your calendar, I guess, and identify date. We would prefer to do this as early in September, so it means you would need to fill this out as soon as possible. Because we have one board member that would be gone after the 15th of September, plus we'd like to do it as early as we can to mark that off of our important item off of our to-do list. So somewhere between the 1st and the 15th, if anybody has conflicts during those days, we can do it in the evening to accommodate most people's schedule from those of us who work. So does anybody have any dates between the 1st and 15th that are totally out of pocket?
When you want to mark out, when you have to visit 13.
Well, yeah, thank you. So now we're down to,
That week anyway.
I'm sorry.
I'd be out that week. We will about the visit, so.
Oh, for between the 13th and the 15th? Okay, and the 6th is Labor Day. So we have Tuesday, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, or the 10th would probably be, or early in September. We'll still have time to get if we get these filled out and returned, we'll still have time to do it early September, like really
And
early.
Chairman,
Yes.
we will work with whatever the board, but we do have a major Graham open house event on the 7th.
Okay,
That will last till 6. And so I can leave after
And that's a
I
long
introduce
drive after
that.
that, yeah.
Well, I can leave after I introduce
Well,
Dr. Bunyard for that matter, I suppose.
is Saturday totally undoable for anybody?
Which Saturday?
The 11th? Saturday morning, the 11th?
I think that's what the board did.
We did
last
like,
year, or 2 years ago.
2 years.
Maybe not last year, because you,
Well, last year we weren't done.
Okay. All right, so let me do another thing here. Okay, so we're talking about the 11th of September is what we're talking about, right? Okay. We, in the past, we've kind of come pretty early to kind of get it behind us. I'm sorry,
Earlier the better for me.
8 a.m.?
I do 9.
9, okay, that's okay. 9 o'clock, is that okay? On Saturday, the 11th of September. But this usually doesn't last very long, so it won't, yeah. All right, so we've got 9/11, special day, and, at 9 a.m. All right. So, we don't really have to vote on that, do we?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Just
Just,
Public
we have it,
notified.
we have it on there. All right, so the next one would be that we would like to consider the changing of the October 18th board meeting to the week after that, if that would be okay. I think Dr. Wallace has a conflict on,
Totally my fault. I have been elected by the 48 community colleges to serve as treasurer secretary for the Texas Association of Community Colleges. And so as an officer of the board now, we have a fall retreat. They changed the date because of accommodation things to the 18th, and that's the only reason if we can, great. If we can't, I can come to Austin after that board meeting.
so that would be, the request is to move it to the
25th.
25th of October. So on Monday evening, it's just pushing it off a week. Is that okay with everybody? Everybody's nodding, so we're gonna, we'll make that note that the board meeting will be changed to the 25th. All right. So I believe that wraps up the discussion and possible action items. The next item would be executive session, and we have no reason to have one of those this evening. So, the next item, since there is no discussion from executive session, would be adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Henderson said he does. Have a second by Mr. Hott. Additional discussion. All those in favor say good night.